Zeich Nishmas, Arein Rosh HaYeshiva, Rav Finkle Yarteit. It's very hard to believe to have to say that. Even after a year of him not being here, but the whole year talking about him, remembering him, what he meant to us. How the impression he made on us every day, even if we were 6,000 miles away, speaking to him, myself speaking to him over the phone, almost on a daily basis. There's a song when we were younger that we, a Pirchei song, we named in the Heilige Tag. Zezen Aveh gegangen, where do we take those holy days, high holy days from Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot? We darfen sie zu halten mit eiserne Zwangen, that we have to hold on to those days throughout the winter with pliers to hold on to the Kedusha. As the year comes to a close and there's no more Hesped and there's no more Avelis, so now we have to just reminisce and take all those milas that we saw from Yeshiva Zatzal, where he taught us, and hold on to it with our dear heart, so that when we go on, we're able to emulate all the limudim, all the lessons that he taught us. The Meshech Chochmah says, the first Meshech Chochmah on this week's parsha, Lech Lecha, Ha'atzcha Miladecha El Oretz Asher Areka, and the Meshech Chochmah explains, El Oretz Asher Areka means to the land which I'll show you. So Meshech Chochmah says that more than just showing him the land, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Avraham Avinu that I'm going to show you who you are. By taking you to Eretz Yisrael, I'm going to show what your milas are. All your hidden milas that you had are going to come out when you come to Eretz Yisrael. The part of going to Eretz Yisrael is going to beweisen wer du bist, who you are, who you really are. And we know the Rosh Hashiva born and bred in Chicago, from those beautiful pictures that we saw as a high school, as a child, and then as a high school graduate. Kadosh Baruch Hu had gefiert. Kadosh Baruch Hu had Hashgacha, bring him to Eretz Yisrael. As a young boy, seeing his great uncle, Rabbi Eliezer Yudel, making a tremendous impression, the famous stories, how he saw how Rabbi Eliezer Yudel from the corner of his eye would kiss the Shas every day, that would give him a tremendous limud for life, that Avas Torah that remained with him, and that he carried over, and that he showed, and he exhibited all his life. And that godless came out when he went to Eretz Yisrael, how he was mashpia, how he became what he became, and how he was mashpia on the whole world. He became what he became through coming to Eretz Yisrael and through seeing those lessons, and that's what he taught us. But I want to share with you something that I think was very profound in Baltimore. Rosh Hashiva came here only once. Only came here once. Mamash the last few months before his Patira. And in my 22 years of the relationship that I had with the Rosh Hashiva, I started working for the mayor in September of 1990, and Rosh Hashiva became Rosh Hashiva about 6 months prior. I never saw him as happy and as zufrieden than after when he came here to Baltimore. There was something which resonated in him that stayed with him and gave him a tremendous simcha, what he saw here in the city of Baltimore. And I was trying to think, what was this that spoke to him and that gave him that chizuk when he came here to Baltimore? And he was talking about it for weeks after his return back to Eretz Yisrael. And I think it's two nekudas which I think everybody can relate to. In Fakert, the community having these milas can emulate and continue these lessons. The Mishnah says in Ovis, Yehuda ben Tema Oimer, as panim leGehenim, boishes panim leGan Eden. That somebody who has azus is leGehenim, but the person has to have a boishes panim. But Reb Chaim Volozhin explains that every yid has to have a koyach ha'azus, has to have a certain strength, but it has to be an inner strength. It has to be tomon mibifnim, inside. On the face has to be the boishes panim. And everybody knows, everybody saw the tremendous ahavas abriyos, the boishes panim, the smile, the love, the kiss, how it was by the Rosh Hashiva, and how he uplifted everybody, whoever came in contact with him, anyone and everyone. From the non-religious to the biggest Gadol B'Yisrael, everybody felt that boishes panim, that sweetness and that ahava that emanated from him. But every yid has to have a koyach ha'azus, and that we know the Rosh Hashiva had a tremendous koyach ha'azus. But it was all tomon b'mifnim. Mitzad his own physical disabilities, his koyach ha'azus never it made him go and never stopped him from doing anything having to do with harbatzas Torah, with growing Torah, with building Torah, any project that he undertook, the most difficult projects which people would not even start without knowing how to be able to finance it, he would undertake, because he knows there was l'te'elis of b'mikadeshim shemayim and continuing and being marbitz Torah. Nothing ever stopped him. That koyach kept him going and building and building and building without cheshboinus. And in everything that came to his table of Shaila, which was Negeh to Ruchnius, there were no psharas. Never did he relent if it was Negeh to cover our Torah. And I think the community here with their boishes panim, the community here is a community which is very helpful, accommodating. We know that in this city there's a tremendous ruach of Baalei Tshuva who come here to live, and everybody feels very welcome. But at the same time, there's a tremendous commitment beside this community. The interior koyach ha'azus everybody has to do what's required, what's asked of them, without any fanfare. So this lesson, I think, spoke to him, and he saw this on the faces of so many people of this community. And I think this is what gave him the tremendous chizuk here. And this is something that we can all ourselves emulate as we go on. Another lesson that I think spoke to him, that he saw here in this community, he was a man who always gave. He never took anything for himself, nothing for himself, everything for Talmidim, everything for others, to help others. Always gave of himself, time to meet others. And when he gave of his time, you never felt like you were imposing on him. He was always ready and able and always willing to speak to anybody and talk to anybody, whoever needed chizuk. Just want to share with you one personal story. My son, my oldest son, Menachem Mendel, who lives in Eretz Yisrael, he does, in his profession now, he's like a personal trainer for those who need extra help in health and exercise. And my son, being a real boy who wants to always give as well, he saw this by the Rosh Hashiva all the time. He said that he wants to go to Rosh Hashiva every morning and do some exercise with him because he feels it's going to help him be able to function throughout the day. And Rosh Hashiva, in the beginning he refused. He didn't want. Any therapist who ever tried to do anything with the Rosh Hashiva never lasted, because Rosh Hashiva never was a taker. He was always a giver. He never wanted to take from anybody. He always refused. My son offered him. He said to him, I want to come, but every time I come, I want to say over a shtickle Torah to you before we start. I want to say something over the hair I saw, what I heard, what I saw. And then the Rosh Hashiva lit up and it was maskim. Because then already he felt that he wasn't taking, he was giving. If he was giving, he was ready to do anything to give to anybody. And that's the way he was able to do some exercise with him and do some things to help him. Unfortunately, it was only Mama's the last 3 months of his life. But he had this tremendous opportunity of being Mishamishim, which actually did help him throughout the last few months. But that's what he was, always giving and giving and giving. And I think over here, that's what he saw. He saw how the community is giving. Outside New York, we never saw a quantity of so many donations given in one city at the time when the Rosh Yeshiva came. How everyone was mishtatev, by being mishtatev, by helping the yeshiva, and also the outpouring of attendance. Over 1,000 people came that night, the Tnukava La Torah, how people felt they wanted to join and be part and give up of their time. So I think that also resonated by him, and that also spoke to him, and I think that made a big, tremendous reishim on him. So may HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us the strength to continue to emulate his ways by giving the way he gave, and everything that he meant to us, we should be, and was mashpia on us. I'm sure if we continue in these drachim, it will be a meilitz yosher for us, for Klal Yisrael, and I'm sure for the community as well. Yizir Chai Baruch. At this point, I want to ask Rav Yaakov Hafer, who actually was in Mir Yeshiva through that whole Tekufa when the Yeshiva was there, and he can actually capture the flavor of what gave the Rosh Yeshiva the Yechilas to steig, to become what he became, and to be such a big mashpia in Klal Yisrael.
As Reb Mordechai just mentioned, it's not, Rashi says it's not a covet for a nifter to say a hesped after at a year's time. I really would like to remark about something that you just mentioned, Reb Mordechai. There have been many Anoshim Chashuvim, but I would say more so Gedolei Yisrael that have come to our community. And something special happened last year when the Mir Rosh Yeshiva and Reb Nosson Tzvi when he came to Baltimore. I'm not just talking about the outpouring of so many people that came, which was quite remarkable. But there was an excitement, and you could feel it. And there was something special that happened, and it was different. And I thought to myself, why was it? And I just know for myself, and I think that I really could testify on behalf of everybody. He just challenged all of us. That means I think that when everybody looked at him and saw him and tried to understand a little of what was going on with him, it just was such a great challenge to all of us. I saw after the Ptira, they printed, there were a lot of pictures that were shown in different publications, and it's fascinating. If you ever look at the dais of maybe sometimes Gedolei Yisrael that are sitting and somebody's speaking, so they're sitting and they're, hopefully listening to what the speaker has to say. Take a look at when Reb Nosson Tzvi was speaking. There was one picture, and I just couldn't get over it, where Rev Yoshev was looking at him. He's looking at him with awe. Rev Yoshev, was Rabban Shel Yisrael. He was, Reb Nosson Tzvi was not in his league as a Talmid Chochem. And he was in awe of him. You could see, because he challenged everybody. And if he can do something like that with all his difficulties and with all the pain and with all feeling sorry for himself, he just went on and with love and with warmth and with ava for for his goal and for his mission, it was such a challenge to everybody. I just know for myself. You wake up in the morning or sometimes in the daytime, and you know things are busy and overwhelming and whatever it is. And I think to myself sometimes, I have that picture in front of myself of what he went through. It's such a challenge, and I can't tell you what kind of a mechayev it is. And that's really the purpose of these words. I mean, the words when was kemenem for them. What can we take from him? How can we make that part of our own lives? I was a bocher. I came to Mir Yeshiva. I'd left Lakewood. I'd learned in Lakewood for a few years and went to Mir Yeshiva. I was learning with Reb Nochem at the time, at nighttime, in his house. Reb Nosson Tzvi was a younger man. He must have been married for about 2 years or 3 years. I'm not exactly sure. And he learned with great hasmada, with great, enormous hasmada. He was there day and night. He was a younger man, but he just like Pasik Puma Megilsa. He learned, at that time, I still remember the picture where he was sitting in the Beis Medrash. It was just one Beis Medrash, and he was sitting and he used to learn with Reb Chaim Kamil, who was a Mishuna Dike Talmud Chochem, became Rosh Yeshiva later on in Ofakim. But he was Mir Yeshiva had really giants in the yeshiva. Mishuna Dike Talmid Chachamim. If I don't know if when you were learning there was a Mendelatik. When I was learning, it was still sitting and learning in the Beis Medrash. Shia Landau, Mekurev, Mishuna Dike Talmid Chacham, Mekurev by the Chazanish. They were used to learn together every day. Used to learn in the afternoon. They used to learn B'Chavrus, Mendelatik, and he was a younger man. He was a nice younger man. That means a younger man that learned with great hasmada, with great intensity. He wasn't an Eloi. He was not an Eloi. There were Elohim there. There were Elohim in Mir Yeshiva. He was not an Eloi. And I remember talking to him and learning once, and I was always impressed with him, but it was fine. It was nice. What I learned from him, I saw him develop, and I saw a development that I can really be made was shaloi kedar chateva. I'm talking now in his abilities as a Talmud Chochem. He had a good mind, and he had Mishuna Hasmada. But if he would have been a mathematician, or if he would have been an astronomer, or whatever it is, he wouldn't have been a great astronomer, a great mathematician. It's not the way it goes. There's a matona that the Rabbeinu Shalom gives by Torah. There's a special siyata d'shmaya. And the rise in his level was, I'm telling you, shaloi kedera chateva. Shaloi kedera chateva. He became a major Talmud Chacham. You have to understand, he said chaburas in Mir Yeshiva to many, many different, bochum or yungalite that were learning different mesechtes at the same time. It's hard enough having the oil of the oil hakaspi and all the oil of running a yeshiva, the largest yeshiva in the world at the time, to run such a yeshiva and then be able to be shakua bilimutcha, but not just bilimutcha in one mesechta, in the yeshivish mesechta, but in 5 different mesechtas. Try saying such chaburas, where you're talking about yungalite that are shakua bilimudim and challenging and critical, and here he's coming and saying chaburas. It was something that I say without any hagzama, without any exaggeration, it was shaloi kedar chateva. And that's the matana that the Rebbeinu Shalom gives those that learn Torah Lishma. And so none of us, the point that I'm just trying to make is, none of us can say that we don't have the same abilities that he had, we don't have the same abilities that Gdolei Yisrael had. That's not what counts. When there's a she'ifa, and when there's a drive, and when there's a cheshik, and when there's a ava, and Hasmoda, then the Rebbeinu Shalom gives matanos that are very, very different. And they're Shaleked Der Chateva, Harchef Picha V'Amalehu. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, you desire, open up your mouth, and want to have the words become part of you. That means not just learn them, but become part of you. They become part of you, then V'Amalehu, the Rebbeinu Shalom promises, I'll fill it up, and I'll fill it. And that's mamish what you saw with him. I would like to talk about one nakuda that there's so many things to talk about, and there are other people that are going to be speaking, and we're going to hear Heintiger Rosh Hashiva speak. I would like to talk about one nakuda, one aspect of him that to me was really remarkable. There's a Gemara in Tainus. There's a story. There was Abaya, and there was Rava, and there was somebody who was called Abba Umna. Abba Umna was a bloodletter, which people used to go to all the time, and they used to go, and it was meant to be healthy to, they used to use bankis, they used to use cups and create a vacuum and draw blood from their back. The Gemara says that that Abaya used to receive a baskol min hashamayim once every week, every Erev Shabbos, used to come and tell him shalom. When you tell somebody shalom, it's a greeting. It means you're special in my eyes. And he used to hear this baskol once a week. Rava malu yom de Kippur, every Erev Yom Kippur. Abba Umna had a baskol every day. Every day, the Gemara says in Tainus. So Abaya and Rava had a chlishas hadas. What is so special about him is our learning, not as important to the Rebbeinu Shalom, but we're doing is not considered to be as noble as what Abba Umna is doing. What is he doing? So the Gemara says they told him, he's doing something that you can't do. He's a bloodletter. So the people come to him. There are men that come to him, and there are women that come to him. And so they wear a gown. And what he did was that you wear a gown, and he made a little hole in the back of the gown where you use the cups. And he made just a small little hole, and it's there that he was able to put the cups in to preserve the tznius of the Bnei Yisrael. And then also on the way out, he just put a pushka there, and if you wanted to put money in, you put. If not, not. So there's something. So he did something that you couldn't do. You, Abba and Rava, you're not Isaac in these kinds of things. It's without any question important, and it's something that is so noble to preserve the tznius of the Bnei Yisrael, and that's all important. But I think that there's something that the Gemara is talking about that Abba Umna did that is something that's even more important in this, what he did with these cups. Try to think of yourself all your life. I'm a tznuah, and this is my yofi, and this is the yofi of a Bas Yisrael. And now, all of a sudden, here's a person, because of something that's necessary medically, he has power over me, and he can do whatever I want, whatever he wants to do, and I'm vulnerable, and I'm powerless, and I can't do anything. And look, and take a look at how he treated me. Take a look how he treated me with kavod, with a mishunadik kavod. Although he's the one that wields the power here, he's the doctor, he's the surgeon, he's the CEO, he's whatever it is. He has power in his hands, and yet doesn't show it in any way, and he lets me keep my dignity as a person. And my dignity as a person here is my tznius. So he could have done anything he wants to. We're shava b'shava, keep what is so important to you. That is something that is so choshev, such a midah. Try to think of it. You're the Rosh Yeshiva of the biggest yeshiva in the world. You're, excuse my language, you're the boss. You're the boss. And Alpicha, Yishak, whatever you say goes. And he has Talmidim. And you never felt, a person, I say again, when he's in a position of power, even if he's a good person, you could feel that power. You could feel it from him and in him. You never felt something like that. He was shava b'shava. He was shava b'shava. The way he treated you, the reverence and the dignity and the koved and the harocha that he treated you with, it's remarkable. And you have to understand, power grows on a person. Anybody that is in a position of power, anybody that you're in a position of power in your family, you're in a position of power over your children. And if you have an ozeret come to your house, you're in a position of power in your home. And people love to do it. At least I can show a balabatishkeit over somebody else. At least there I can make the ozeret do what I want her to do. Everybody has that opportunity. And especially if somebody is an employer. And it happens all the time. And if a person is not careful, if you're not careful about that, it gets to you. And I always was amazed at how he acted and what he was. I say again, you're the biggest Rosh Yeshiva in the world, and you never felt it. You never felt something like that from him. You have to think of the goydel of that midah and what it is, that it doesn't get to you, especially after a period of time and after a period of years. It's so highly unusual for this midah, and it's something that should be really a challenge to all of us. There were the people I'm looking around. The people are here are all Americans. Israelis were not used to his kind of talk. Go home, do me a favor, and give a kiss to the kids. Is not that kind of talk. He stayed simple. He stayed, in a way, unsophisticated. He was who he was. Sein Liebschaft, his love for people, and his love for a Ben Torah, and his love for just a Yid. It was sometimes, it was almost, it's embarrassing. It was embarrassing almost. And it was so, you could just kiss it. He stayed who he was, unsophisticated, didn't have to put on any auras about himself and who he was. He just wanted to stay and serve his Creator and serve his people, b'nei amonos. And you could just see that cheshik, that cheshik and that ava for Torah, and it just, when you're so osuk in things, when you're so osuk with problems and with trying to raise funds and saddled with such enormous problems and debts and everything that there are, people have a tendency to lose that youth that they have and the zeal that they have within themselves. He never lost it. He was a younger man all his life. He was a grandfather. He was a younger man who just got married. That's the way he was. And the cheshik and the aliyah for Torah is, I can only say it was such a challenge to me, and I think to everybody. And that's why, when we came last year, I think when all of us came last year, it was really a sight to behold, and I'll just never forget it. Never forget it. The Rebbeinu Shalom should help that. we shouldn't forget the lessons that we can, if we have open eyes and an open mind to learn from these things. We'll be much, much better people, and I can only say that Mir Yeshiva was so fortunate to have such a Rosh Yeshiva, and anybody that learned in the Yeshiva, or anybody that saw what kind of a Rosh Yeshiva it had, there's so much to learn, and Ren Shem should help. We shouldn't forget those lessons.
Rabbi Eichenstein just wanted to, he was a Talmud in Sword Rosh Yeshiva in those blossoming years, and he wants to share with us some Divrei Chizuk.
It's just been zeicher to hear from Rabbi Hapfer, from Mordche. We've come together today to commemorate the first Yarteit of the Größer Yeshiva, Rav Finkle Yarteit. It's so difficult. It was always Shlita, just a short while ago. Which the Gemara says, Ein oisem nefashis the tzadikim, devreim heim zechoinam. When it comes to make remembrance of tzadikim, we don't create beautiful matzevis as a remembrance. It's only devreim, it's the words and their actions, which is for us a remembrance. I'd like to speak about a little bit the Nekuda that Rabbi Hapfer had just spoken about, as a lot of the other Nekudas are very well known and very well documented. For example, the tremendous empire of Torah that was developed under the guidance and leadership of the Yeshiva Zeichet Tzadik Kodesh Levracha, which I myself was also Zeichet to be Nehene and to learn in the Yeshiva. That's well known, as it's here for everyone to see. The tremendous Mesias Nefesh that the Yeshiva had for Torah. Amongst us Chaveim, we used to joke around in Yeshiva, Mesias Nefesh for Torah. Mesias Nefesh, the translation of Mesias Nefesh means giving up one's life for Torah. That was not by our Yeshiva. He was living it up with the Torah Kedosha. It was a source of geschmack, a source of joy and happiness in life. That was well known, as everyone knows that about the Yeshiva. However, I'd like to share a point or two about the history of the Yeshiva in his younger years in Chicago, which might not be that well known. As the Gemara says in Baba Basra, about the great Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that learned Kol HaTorah Kula, and didn't leave out, finishes off the Gemara, Lo Dava Godol, Hanimaisim Ekaviv, Lo Dava Kotin, Havayas Abai V'Rove, that the great Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai learned the Kol HaTorah Kula from the most complex issues of the creation of mankind, all the way down to the more basic issues, the more simple issues of the question and answers of Abai V'Rove, which is a glaring kasha. Why was Abai V'Rove zoiche that the Gemara should be Nikram al Shemam, should be called on their name? There are so many different groups of Amiroim that also Keseder had different questions and answers that they used to share with each other in the Gemara. Rav Shmuel, Rav Huna, Rav Chizda. Why was Abai V'Rove zoiche that they should be the one that the Gemara should be Nikram al Shemam? To which the Gemara in Bracha sheds a little bit of light about the history of Abai V'Rove when they were youngsters, when they were children. Says the Gemara, when they went to Cheder by the Größer Rabbi asked them when they were youngsters of the age of 6 years old, when one makes a bracha, l'mi mevachim, to whom does one make a bracha to? To whom does one bless? To which they answer back, Rava pointed to the roof of the house in reference of the Bnei Shalom that's beyond the roof. However, Abaye was not happy with that. Abaye took his Rebbe outside and took Rabbi outside and showed him the heavens and showed him the Bnei Shalom that's in heaven. To which Rashba says Abaye grew to be a greater Gadol, B'Yisrael, due to the fact that he exerted himself. And it wasn't just enough to have the Yeshamayim, but he did everything involved. He had the wholeness. He had to take his Rebbe outside and show him outside in his Seichel as a cotton where the Bnei Shalom was. He wanted to do it 100% the right way. To which Rabbi answered back after this story, after this incident, he said, how fortunate that these Talmidim of mine are going to be great Gedolim and Tzaddikim, as a Yeshamayim is so obvious in a young age, which is, some Rishonim say it was the age of 6 years old. With this, maybe we could understand, as the Mishnah says in Avis, Kol she'yiraseh kadamis chachmasai, chachmasai miskayamis. One who is fearful of Shemayim for the Bnei Shalom precedes his wisdom and his knowledge. His chachma has a kiyum. We see the tremendous Yeshamayim that Abaye and Rava had as youngsters, which that now we could understand, perhaps, that's why there was Zoiche, that the Gemara was Nikram al Shemam, the Gemara was called by their name, the question and answers, Havai is Abaye and Rava. For this I'd like to share a story that my father was witness to in Chicago, when the Gross Yeshiva Zecher Tzadik Shavracha was a youngster. He came knocking on the door of my grandfather, Zecher Tzadik Shavracha, the Tzaddik Rebbe of Chicago. As a minig in the city of Chicago was, that it wasn't so common to have shmura matzah. As the halacha, it's 100% okay, mishim matzahs. However, somebody had told him that perhaps there were people that held that there might be a better way of being mekayim the mitzvah of achilas matzah through shmura hand matzah. He went looking around through the town who might have a couple of matzahs to spare to give him, so he could be mekayim that mitzvah with the full shleimus. To which he came knocking on the door of the Zayde, Zechayim Levracha. And when the Zayde spoke with him, Lahavd Minchaim, the Tate, so Malach Yomenzan said that my grandfather was so nispol from the reign of Yishmaim that this child had. Torah, learning, davening, midas toivus, that was obvious, that was a given. But the wholeness in Yishmaim, wherever he could do something a drop better, perhaps were those that might hold that this was something better. His complete submission to the Bnei Shalom, his complete Yishmaim, was there in his younger years as a youngster. Is it then a chiddush? Kol she'yiraseh kadamis chachmasai, chachmasai miskayamis. One who is Yishmaim precedes. His wisdom, his knowledge. It's no chiddush that he was the one that was able to develop that tremendous empire of Torah and to become the greatest yeshiva, at least in numbers, in the world. Chachmasai miskayamis. His chachmas, wisdom, knowledge had a kiyum. However, the Baal Musa bring down that one of the major ingredients of Yishamayim is the midah toiva, the character trait of anova, which David the Melech says in Tehillim, Al Tivyenu Regel Gava, which the next pasuk finishes off, Sham naflu doicha v'lo yochlu kum. Let not arrogance take a hold of us, as there one falls v'lo yochlu kum and cannot rise up. As the Baal Musa Masber, then every bad character trait, the Bnei Shalom is there together with the person to help him rise up. However, in the character trait of arrogance, that there's a place where the Bnei Shalom just can't take that. He's not there. And therefore it's so much more difficult to rise up from that bad midah. We see how important that is for one's Yir Shemayim, the concept of another, in order to have complete submission to the Bein Shleim. There's no place for arrogance. With this, I would like to share a story or two which I personally was witness to as I lived in Eretz Yisrael. And I was zeicher to be mishamished the Rav of Yerushalayim for close to 6.5 years on a daily basis. And almost on a weekly basis, on Friday, the Rosh Shiva used to come visit the Rav of Yerushalayim, Rav Tovia Weiss, in order to get a bracha on to Wunsch on Good Shabbos to the Rav of Yerushalayim. It was a moedik sight to see. At approximately close to a half a block away, the Rosh Shiva was waiting in a car to see when the Rav would turn the corner towards his house and would come running out in his sickly state with his meshamish to run towards the Rav of Yerushalayim, which in response to the Rav of Yerushalayim would run towards him and they would meet halfway and would ask him, Rosh Shiva Shlita, how was your week in yeshiva? To which Rosh Shiva answered, Baruch Hashem, Tzarib Benochavach of Lumda Torah, we passed another week of Lumda Torah, that Baruch Hashem, the Bachim Yungelait are steiging. To which they gave each other a bracha Birchas Shabbos and they went away. And they parted from each other. However, that was not it. Every time before he would leave Eretz Yisrael, he would not leave Eretz Yisrael to a trip to America or anywhere else where he was traveling without stopping by the Rav of Yerushalayim to get his bracha for Siyat Shema on his trip. When I was standing there by the side and witnessing this, sometimes on a weekly basis, or if you travel middle of the week, it was less than a weekly basis, I was pushing the spell. Here we're talking about the Rosh Shiva, the greatest Rosh Shiva. In the world, Akpam in numbers, thousands of people are looking up towards him. Like we heard from Rabbi Hapfer, the Nisyonis, that when people meet success at such a young age, that it shouldn't get to their heads. Which Rosh Shiva Zechayna Levracha was zeicher to that. With thousands of people coming to ask his advice and get his bracha for Siyata D'Shmaya, he felt the need. He felt that he had to come on to someone else to ask his bracha for Siyata D'Shmaya. What a nava. What humility this is. It's a lesson that Keseda, I think, all the time by myself personally, of the tremendous galus of this Yid. We all know of the tremendous Mesias Nefesh he had. But then a chiddush that this person should have such tremendous Mesias Nefesh, such a chiddush that he should be so matzliach in building such an empire of Torah. It was the foundation that he laid in his younger years of Yir Shemayim. There's knowledge has a kiyum. It's as simple as that he was zeicher to become, and his yeshiva should have that tremendous kiyum and continue to go on. As after his pitirasai we see the great hatzlachas yat shmai that yeshiva continues to have, as was laid on such strong foundations of Yir Shemayim and Anova. With this, I would like to be Messiahim. Perhaps we could learn out a tremendous lesson of the importance of educating our children at a young age, appreciating how important it is to infuse into them the concept of Yir Shemayim, appreciation for Yir Shemayim, not thinking they might be too young, it doesn't make a difference. We see by the Shiva, Zechaynu Levracha, what great of a difference it did make in his life, as we see he grew to be such a great giant. As the Gemara says, that a fruit as it begins to blossom, you're able to see right away what the ultimate payday is going to be. If it starts at such a great way of Yir Shemayim, it will go to greatness. of a Talmud Chacham, and to learn from the drachim of the yeshiva, the tremendous anov and shiflis, how it never got him his success in life, as we heard from Rabbi Hapfer also. And he always stayed with that tremendous anov and shiflis to Talmidei Chachamim. The Eibusher will help him, we shpizoiche, to the bracha of Macha Hashem Elikim Dimam Al Kopanim, through the binya of Habayis HaShlishi, the binya of the Beis HaMikdash, and the coming of Mashiach b'mher b'maynu amen.
Shuster Abanu Shlita, entire tzibur gathered here. Abatsim wasn't slated to speak now, but we do have a few minutes before the video. Dr. Elman, who is a close confidant of the Rosh Hashiva, will share his memories, his machshavos, with the Olam immediately after the video, the live video hookup. I just wanted to share. In the meantime, we have 5 minutes. They pushed it off till 12:05 from Eretz Yisrael. It's been a very, very, very long year. A year of reminiscing, a year of looking back and taking lessons, which we all felt an achrayus all the years that we knew the Rosh Hashiva, but it certainly was a challenging year for Talmidei HaYeshiva, for Chaverei HaYeshiva. It's been very difficult. But the Rosh Hashiva left us with so much. He left us with the greatest yeshiva in the world, which he single-handedly built to the level that to what it's become today. And the Rosh Hashiva left us a legacy which we constantly learn from. And left us the Mamala Makam, the Hentig Rosh Hashiva Reb Leis Yudel Shlita. A Mamala Makam, the Rambam says in Hilchos Malachim, Parak Aleph, the Rambam talks about what is a Mamala Makam. The Rambam says in all types of Shrara, in Malchus, in Parnasei HaTzibur, the Mamala Makam. What is the Mamala Makam? The first thing the Rambam says, of course, it goes to the oldest child. But then the Rambam, a little later on, explains the different kind of personalities that a Mamala Makam needs to have, and brings down the Gemara in Kesubos. The Rebbe and his children, and Rebbe Gamliel was Mamala Makam. And the Gemara asks why. He said because Rebbe Gamliel was the Mamala Makam in Yiras Shamayim. With Yiras Shamayim, that's the Iker. The Rambam says Yiras Shamayim is the Iker Mamala Makam. A person could have Chachma. He could have one child with Chachma, one child with Yiras Shamayim. The Rambam says the Iker is Yiras Shamayim. Avada, if they have both, that's Avada and Avada what a Mamala Makam is. But the Iker Mamala Makam is the Yiras Shamayim. What is Yiras Shamayim? How do you understand this? Is the Yerucham, yesterday's parsha. He says, it's in Shir Hashirim. It says in the pasuk, "Ocha Islanu in Perek Ches, Ocha Islanu Kitana, B'Shadayim Ein La, Manasa Lacheseinu B'Yom Sheyidu Barba." The Medrash says that pasuk of Ocha Islanu Kitana, she's a small child. Our sister is a small child. Shadayim Ein La, it's talking about Avraham Avinu. That's talking about the Kivshana Eish and Ur Kasdim. Dr. Biruchim. On this we know the Medrash on this pasuk says, "Im chaymahi nimna aleh tiras kosef." Dr. Biruchim, what's a chayma? A chayma is exactly what the Rambam says. The chayma, Yiras Shemayim is the ikar. When you have Yiras Shemayim, that's what you can build. Nimna aleh tiras kosef. That's when you can build a great, great empire with Yiras Shemayim. Chachma Avada a person can learn, but Yiras Shemayim, you can build a great empire in Yiras Shemayim. And that's what the Eibishter told Avram Avinu. The Malachim in Shemayim were declaring, what do we do with Avram Avinu? Do we build him up? Yes, he had Yiras Shemayim, but was it a soft Yiras Shemayim? Did it have liquidity? Was it solid? We weren't sure. Let's put him into Ur Kasdim, put him into Kivshana Eish, and from there we'll know whether he's ready, he's roy, livnei selek tiras kasef. And Avraham Avinu was thrown into Ur Kasdim. That hardened his Yiras Shemayim became hardened. And that was the Das Mashi Dubar Ba. Abba Nachdem, he went in and Zok the Pasuk im Chaymehi, Nivna Alea Tiras Kasef. We built the Tiras Kasef. Thus haste Yiras Shemayim. We heard so much just now about the Rosh Yeshiva, Zecher Tzadik v'Kadosh Levracha. We heard so much about the Yiras Shemayim, Gelept Yiras Shemayim. He was a Chayma in Yiras Shemayim. He was a Chayma in Chachma as well. That's what he built. And Baruch Hashem, we are all, every one of us, everyone in Klal Yisrael, particularly Talmidei Yeshiva Smir, Azoiche, the Heintiger Rosh Yeshiva.
It's not starting yet. I'll be putting things up here.
Good.
Unfortunately, it will be a little distracting, but
that's fine. The Heintiger Rosh Yeshiva. I think every one of us that have walked the halls and have seen and witnessed Rosh Yeshiva when he came here, we can all be comforted. It's so clear. The Tmimus, the Edelkeit, the Reinkeit of Reb Lezer Yudel, if I can say this, it's so clear. The Yiras Shemayim is there. It's such a rainy Yiras Shemayim. And it was passed down from the Rosh Yeshiva, Zecher Tzadik v'Kadosh Levracha, in such a pure way. It's so magnificent. And I will tell you, Nivna Aleh Tiras Kosef, in the several opportunities that I was able to speak to the Heintiger Rosh Yeshiva Shlita, I asked him the obvious question: "Nu, was tutzach in mir yeshiva? Wie geht es?" His answer was, "Die Limanat Torah is a zoy gewaldig." He said, if I can paraphrase, he said, it hasn't been this way in so long. It's unbelievable how much Liman HaTorah there is. The Hasmadas HaTorah is so gewaldig. Nivna Leo Tiras Kosef. That's what it takes to have Yiras Shemayim. That's what you get out of Yiras Shemayim. We were Zeicheted as Talmidim of the Yeshiva to be a part of this unbelievable Makom Torah that's built, it's eingeweiht with Yiras Shemayim. Because otherwise it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't have happened. The history of Mir Yeshiva would not have come about the way it did without the rain of Yiras Shemayim. And it's passed on in such a beautiful way. And Baruch Hashem, we're zeicha to this. And so the Eibishter Nogeben, the Rosh Yeshiva Shlita, Reb Lezer Yudel, and all the Rosh Yeshiva, und alle Talmidei Yeshiva, und uns alle, the koyach, to keep having the she'ifas that the Rosh Yeshiva had eingeweiht in uns. He mamish put it in us, like the Rebbe of Hafer said, you couldn't not.
start yet.
You couldn't not see it and feel it and take take a lesson from it, and there should give us all the kayach, that we should keep going mala in all the things that the Yeshiva so much wanted from us. Amila mavet hanetzach. Machal Mashem l'tem al kaphanam.
Die größten Platten, was man gehabt, jeder eine von uns spürt, als er zugenommen von einem, ein Stück von einem, wenn er Platte in Ruchni ist, am Abend Gashmi ist, wie können wir das Bechlaf stehen, öffnen die Wollen, als er seine größten Platten, als er seine Reben, als er seine Hekif, sie nicht zu dagegen Bechlaf. Die alle Wörter, Wörter geeignet, das Wort die Umas, die größten Fabriken, die größten Mamlechtes was er gemacht. Der Herr ist eine Schwenken, Menschen und Wörter von Titlach. Es gibt ein Kule Leif, Kule Meise, Kule Tachlis, Kule Emes. Der Herr ist, als ich in der Riebe in Betzchodisch abgedient, erscheint es ein Kemaspe sein, aber man darf allemal auch Chizuk, die Ressurus darf man auch Dusach, keine Sorgen und ein Wort sein. Das kann auf dich allein. Die Brüder hängen in sich heute. Steht in das Koran, auf dem Posse geht es alles vorne bei Jesumen. Man darf können sein, der Schleimus der Efshom der Mina Menushi. Steht in Posse, Tom im Tirim Hashem Elokecho. Steht in Tarum, Schlim Tehede, der Chalto der Hashem Elokecho. Das heißt, als Gedeh zu sein, Yerushalayim, darf man nur Schleimus. Wie kommt man zu Schleimus? Nur durch Teure, das Hashem Tmimo Meshivas Nofesh, die Teure, das sind die Tmimos, das sind die Schleimus. Teure und zwei Chalokim. Das heißt, du bringst zu Schleimus und das heißt, du darfst umkommen von der Odom HaSholem. Du musst sein HaSholem bemittes. HaSholem, kidei zu können sein Teure, Yehi libi somen bechokecho leman le'evish. Als du sicher sein zu Teure, darf man nur Schleimus, ve'yehi tomim. Als ein Mensch ist dann, die Bewege der Tür ist echt niemand. Janki Bobino, ich bin ein Isch dann Yeshiva Holim. Und da von Kvies, und da seine Yeshiva Holim, Leishe wie Yeshiva Basmone. Es wird sich gedreht, und drößen, wenn ein Isch soll, ohne Kvies. Die zwei Sachen, die Story soll sein, zu seiner Isch dann, weil die Tür soll sein als Mimo, die Tür soll mit Kvies, Yeshiva Holim. Das ist der Jesod von der Schlimmes Abrief, das wir bringen von Orachayim Kodesh zu Befußen, es auch heute trägt, als du heute zu besorgen, dreimal Tag, aber Posti bis zum Achtung bechol HaTev, Tev der Kodesh Baruch Hu, Tev der Tero, זאת Orachayim, שאם הולו בני אודום מרגישים, מסיקוס והרגוס תו התרו, ומשתגים ומסלטים אחריו, ולחוש מבעיניהם ולאוילום כסף וזור למאומו. wie kommt man zu seinen Stadien und Mislatim אחריו? wie kommt man zu das Sitzkeit in Terror? מרגישים מסליקוס והרגוס ובטרור. nur am Sitz והסמודה, אז מלסית לרוס חוקבה, מברת הישיבה הולם, מזיץ בקביעס, dem können zukommen zu der ernsten Sitzkeit. Öfter können zukommen zu der Sitzkeit, eine gewisse Sitzkeit und Zirre, aber zu sein, die Stadium ist Latimachere, muss man Koine sein, was Mode, mit Mimus, seine Olam Esholem, sitzen bequem, seine Jösch bei Hol. Sie gebringt, die Gemorren in Chol und Woche zu sein, Rabbi Yochanan, gab es ein Sifr der Jöv, Oma Hochi, ich war auch noch muss, was soll ich bei ihm לשחיתה, הכל מי שהם לא יודעים, אשנו מי שגודל בתוירו, ואמור לו בתוירו, ואויסן החסרוח ליועצמי. זאת רשת, אז מקבל להצליח כל תוירו, ולימוד התוירו, לחזי זיז, כל הנויס, כל התוירו שבאוילו, הידי כמובן להספיל תוירו, ומעביר ממנו אוי דרך ארץ. תחת הצלת, זה גבין בענתנו, ואנחנו vorgelegt, verschiedene Wochen, sie haben für die Yeshiva. oder ihm gesagt, ich will geben an Dore, so Kiviochel, geben an Schmechel, Marioschen Kiviochel. Azat Zmimus, Azat Habe. Und das gewährt sein ganzer Haus, und das hat gesagt, als wird getan. Die fordert Zmimus in jeder Sache, in Tere, in Omerazere, in Jediesatere, in Oimerkabschat, wie wir, mit allem so, wir kennen nicht einer und der Zweite. Und uns hoffen wir, die zu sein erlauben, die zu verstehen, und Oimerkabschat, muss man noch nach Henkel für dies. Und ohne Henkel können wir nicht zukommen zu dies. Und muss auch beide, Stama Boki, Stama Lampen, ist Tittler, alles hat man Trochen, davon Schlemus, davon Schiefes, keinen Schatz. Und das eben dann Hoges, in alle Weißen, und gesehen hat uns, Schikulu Schlemus, schlimm der Hebel der Chaut und Hashem Gekircho. Sagt Ganzkeit, sagt Ernstigkeit, was vom Buben guckt noch. Das alles gibt als eben Zukir, als Rein, als Schöne. Tussach, alle Wörter Rest für dich allein. Und wenn ich spelle, Admus Moifes, was ein Mensch, ich bin ein Noschen, die Besuch zu tun. Zukommen zu Azar Schlemus. Und dann darf ich zu den Geräumes, zu den Tages, zu den Hechmadregis, Dusches, Poshet, Avoide Tamo, Avoide Iklis, mit der Riesenrossen, mit der Lasche Ife Abschlemus, in jeder Sache, Onkim Schores, Onkim Trutzen. Kein sich nicht getan, auf die Jüze sein, oder auf die Isgad oder in Anoshim. Kein sich nicht getan, weil alle tun das Eid, ich werde bei einem noch gemacht. Jeder Sache unter dem Euro Emes und dem Neuen Atmimus. Und kein Schumstil von der Sache ist nicht glatt. Jeder Sache, ich werde bei einem Tachlis Hashlemus, und auf die Tamo so, dass ich werde mal gefunden. $1 Euro für Rossi, und kein Trutzin. Und aufgewählt, mit Azar Abbas Atere, Azar Abbas Abrius, schlimm der Hiebe der Chaut und der Shem Lekircho. Der Emes und der Schoner, das wir werden näher der Radio, als wir werden bei einem Asuim, bei Emes und bei Yosh, Glat, Rein, Onchesh, Benes und Rabim, das wir werden als Serel, was heißt, weil der Kim Osa Shigirum in Front, weil der Kim Osa Odom Yosh, und der Vater dazu gekommen, zu als echt riesige Dammes, von Missrus Nefesh, von der Sache Atzlochus, in jeder Sache, Azar Schlemus, der Posche gefühlt, versucht den Tam, den Messikus war Redus Toratero. Und der Fall ist gewähnt, Kimishtageya, Mislai Tachaleo. Der gelernt, Onkin Shune Gies, Onkin Shune Dies, Onkin Chashbeines, Oisho, Covid, Nechshow, Be'en auf dem Umo. Er gesagt, dass 40 Jahre hat nicht gelehnt, kein zeitliche Gassen. Kam nicht rein in Geschäften, in Schatzach und Neodom, und nicht weil es gekommen von der Zeit Nazarus und Abrichus. Poshet der Gewinn, ein General behechan am Melech, und am Melech Porzach nicht mit Blote. Bevor sie gewinn, Allah Shem Shomayim ist einmal Yodoi. Sein Moret Bonnen, hat doch zu gießen der Herz. Das ist wie ein Azar Liebschaft, Azar Licht. Menschen, was mir betroffen, nur einmal in Leben. So viele Gehirn aufnehmen, so dass sie das spüren will, auf dem ganzen Leben, so dass sie gewirkt hat sie. Und das ist wenn der Ernste und Kaddish im Schumain, mit seinen größten Arbeitsateure, mit seinen Tiferes Amidus, Tiferes Ordnung, und wir gesehen, was ist, Leute Shalom Atero, והוא כמה נועים דרוכו, כמה מסוכונים עשו, אשרי רבי שלי ביותר. Und gesehen, was ist, wie guckt es, Aschlemus von Leute Tero, was war Schlimmes, Türe kann zubringen. Und als ich bin mit Gattels, mit der Fondem, mit der Breitkeit, von Kishun, Zinsum, ist doch der Heben von allen Katnissen. Und auch noch heute, wir werden kehren mit Koita Türe in dem Dorf, sein Kamusalobim, sein Musogim, in Schiefes Vergattels, Haidis, Verankes, in Jahre Talmud, in Größe, Breite, Musogim, הן ביחס של קובי דרחיבה צוטר ולמדאו הן ברחוב הסגול עשה ישיבה ויפל רות מדרושם ויפל אלפי ובובויס ולוים דתרו ולאוים דתרו sein Oisen wachsen von seiner Halle, von seinem Aschpoe direkt zu Beakifim das war Mabeche של ממש gemacht Ifin oder Rishonim in Amerika und in der Welt. Wir haben gemacht, die Yeshiva von Nifzah Zero wie Israel. Und als sie werden bei einem Kishum wohlbeziehen, wenn am Isnasi Kari בכל החולי אנושי להגדיל צרו להדירו. ובין האיש תורית, אשר הבס יקדס, עם אור הצרו, עם אהבס הצרו, עם יתי נישס כל הוין בייסל באהבו, של אוהבס הצרו ולמדרו, בוי זירוזו. אז הוא כמו בסהבו, בפלוט העונג פלקית, ומחדו לבן עונג שיר עונג רופר, אמקיס, להירוס, למסיפוס מוטרת. dem gewissen Fall soll gesehen bei seiner Heliras, dem Kipschen Eish, was gesehen war Leben, und diese Minute hat Zeit gekostet Woche, was hat Mechab gewesen, wer Ben Yochit, und beschlossen mit den Zinnen, und gefordert von einem Mussogim in Türe, Marochus, Tures, Masech des Nishas, und sind zugebunden, war Voices schon Aaron zu drin, und gesehen die Größe Mercholim, ים הכל ופנטרר, בסוד גזר והרשיר וחיים שולה לתצר. ובגלל מסנטרר, ובכוח אז החיים, der Hokas Eishir, בסוד גזר, unangesagt, von dem Sinn Rabbinisch Tazar, als gewinn Erlach, alle Achas. Und versichert mich nur im Hor, wie viel hat sich gewinn, der Hachzer hat aber nicht mehr und das jeder Tamid geschickt, machen seinen Liebe der Tag und Liebe der Masech und zum Geland alle Jungen und mit Gott von einem Onkel Schores und Chines in Schiuren mit der eigenen Mussogin und Özgenau und Danke Adimut und Geleit Bochum und sich Özgenau und andere Sorg trachten, andere Sorg zu ein, andere Arbeitsateur endlich Masechtes, Klo, wie ihr Nimrod, jeder Zwan, wie viel damit der Chor im Schass in seiner Rüstung. Und als ich werde mit der Sache Hirus, mit der Sache Seder Möfsen, jeder Masechte, Rashi, Tesis, Rishonim, Shitoson, Arufim, Seder und Möfsen, mit der Sache Klokheit, mit der Sache Hirus. Und wenn der Melech begdut, jeder Schirr für der Rüßke Imam Beschwab, Naziach, Befrag, der General, und ich habe gesehen, die Meiner Direm Schuttere, die Anove, die Messirus und der Chisurim, was er gesehen war, Schirr noch in der Zeit. Und alle Schuss, die alle im Hoge, so sind gesehen, was eine Rebbe ist, die Maschkichen. Die haben uns die Größe, die Tiferes Amides, der Erzählung, so sind gesehen, was eine Eltern, die Gottlechaim, die Bobbe. Die Ichtere, größere Raum, der Oma und Bildi Boisik, was er gesehen, was eine Rebbe, der Chaim kein Wegplatz hat. Was ich wenn Kinder regen jo, von einer Sachadas und zu der Erf Pesach, zu der Yom Kippur, zu der Chasen für Kinder, zu der Erf Shabbos, nicht doch keine Sache der Welt, das kann sich zurechnen, zu Ziki, zu Koyachateinen, zu noch 24 nach Weges Raschen Thesis. Zu seiner Mensch, das Jugendlang, und der Gott Yisur Eroi, ich kann nicht vorstellen, wie soll solche gewinnen, zu haben eine einzige Tochter, und wenn sie ist reingestuft, der sehr fremd sagt, mit der Basse Chide, was kommt jetzt der erste Mal reingestuft. Mit öffnen Chazanisch, mit öffnen Runochen, und wir singt da ein tief bei meiner Dirnschen Töre. Ich frage, das ist nicht gehen, ist Nazarus, das ist nicht gehen, nicht wissen gemacht. Das ist Posche, der Rest des Simchas Atere, was kann sein, sie denn doch eine andere Simcha. Sie denn doch noch ein Simcha auf der Welt, was kann sich zumechen zu dem. Und noch ein Tiefkeit in Chidusharim, noch ein Klokheit in Raschen. Und das ist gewinnt das Simcha, was man gesehen hat, ganz Jahr. Fuhren, Shabbos, Nachasne, ich bin kein anderer Sache. Ständig, die Tiefkeit, die Geschmackheit, die Messikus war Rebus zu erzählen. Und das als wird eingesehen und eingebaut über sich im Herzen. Und ausgewachsen von die Größe Schoroschen. Azash Lebens, Azash am Himmels Kodesh. Ich meine, alle meisten, was man erzählt hat, es ist Größe für den, aber Größe Menschlichkeit. Aber es ist einer ruhig, sie nicht so zustellen. Und dieselbe meisten, was man erzählt hat, ein Mensch, was sie gewinnt, du gib mir so. Und so sagt, gerissen und sie betanzt ist da, bis zum letzten Tor quer. mit der Machen der was der Teva was gedacht mit der Tag sein am Wegnehmen machen unnötig am Wegnehmen ist Simche und wie ein Flammfeier Allah will sich nicht untergeben und probiert noch einmal und der hundertste Mal und der tausendste Mal noch einmal und alles mit der Sache ausbringen und was er Sifre der Ehe über das Durchgehen geendigt am Sichte am Chome von Uf und Nefesh jahrelang mit der Sache Wurzeri Gott am Beschämte und nicht am Beschämte in der Öl mein Rabbi Beluch und Lechavi ist es aber als doch not al kol Hamudo ist für Öl am Behochde und der Gewinn auch למעלה ולך ולמטה בפני זה גבין האוהו הפריים חטאת מעשי viel יחידים jeder gewusst על אמס שזו תויזן תרahum רוצה תויזן תרahum wo es מצליח בין צהור מזיר Hals mit ein Wort mit ein Schmeichel und nicht sagt so mit der Augen jeder in der Weise auch das sehr viel Jedine was sie verdienen aber das ist als das extra משטח אינו מדברת לראות endlich als wir uns alle zusammen Kinder, Talmidim, Geboren Befassen sein in Omeratur in Miedenstödes seinen Mischke Söhnen aber in der Wahl dies Jahr zu Schmeier so uns begleitet alle Jungen muss man gesehen haben und wo ist es Jahr zu Schmeier so haben sie sein weiter die jüdische Wahl aber nachher im Weg uns rufen wir fordern von uns eure Materie ich habe nicht Flaschens weil es so eine Familie betönen ins Kind und Ehren ולאפנר משחק זה יותר נראה שמיים כל שייך זה יותר mehr Miedestönes, mehr Herz, mehr Omo so der Ebster שאלה קופטר מוזן בעוליים ותרסנו ויאמר למעלה חמשכיס ערב ולזורסנו ויאמר די der Ebster גבר אז הוא זין שהוא יקוצץ אילון ולייב שמיים so können machen sein Gebules und manche sagen, hat die Latere, wie es ist. Das ist die Zeit im Kodesh gebrochen, und seiner Mädelstreif auf uns alle. Und wir haben gesagt, was uns ein bisschen einfach über vereinfacht die Geschichte. Auf dem Bobes, sein Mann ist ein Schwier, der immer Malchus, zu seiner Mädelstreif, seine gesunde Reinigung, so beistehen, der mich voller Mischproche, der alle Ideen, der Kobe ist es so. נבט לתזיין המילסטויף הזה ועלה עושים מיקרם ועלה תמחי תרר ועלה לימדו תרר פויה בתרר שיראו ברוך בערונות והגבוי הצלוח הנסיעת לשמי וכל מיני דמיתה וזמות אורץ גייס השם ששנזיים ובוא נביא תמיד שמהר בימינו וזיך חכים וסייסך ובוא לצים ובוא ירמי
We're going to have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Elman, as we said before, a close confidant of the Rosh Yeshiva, who spent many hours both here and in America and in Eretz Yisrael together with the Rosh Yeshiva. Dr. Elman.
I can offer a translation if you want one later. B'shus Rabbi Hopfer, Rabbi Eichenstein, Rabbi Grunwald, Rabbi Blumenkrantz, and everybody here who braved not preparing for the storm. We may not have quite the quantity that one might have thought, but certainly we make it up in the quality of the people who are assembled here. In Pirkei Avos, Ram Gamliel tells us, Aseh lecha Rav. Why? Why is it important to watch a Rebbe? We have art scroll biographies, we have tapes, now they're MP3s, shiurim, filtered internet, whatever you want to say. Why? Why do we need a Rav? Why is it important to watch a Rebbe? The Gemara spends a lot of real estate recounting the tales of Chazal who went seemingly sometimes to the extreme in observing the day-to-day lives of their Rebbeim. These are Gedolei Torah, Tanoim, Amoraim. And the Gemara found it important to tell us these stories. So while we focus on the Divrei Torah of a Gadol, we sometimes lose sight of the valuable lessons of living Torah, of Torah's Chaim, that we can and must learn from how the Gadol lives his life. It's hard still for me to believe that Rav Nosson Tzvi is not here. I remember hearing the news of his patira. It's one of those shocking events that you will never forget. Where were you when the Twin Towers were attacked, when the Challenger blew up, when President Kennedy was shot? I was awakened in the early morning hours by a text on my wife's phone. The Levaya of Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkle will be. What kind of sick person would write this? That's what I thought. I had just visited the Rosh Yeshiva in his sukkah a few weeks earlier. He was sitting and talking to Rav Zindel Kreuzer, his longtime chavrusa, and a fixture, a legend in Yerushalayim. And when Rav Zindel took leave, the Rosh Yeshiva turned to me and he said, "That is a holy man. It takes one to know one." I then told the Rosh Yeshiva a chiddush. I cannot remember what I told him, but he was very excited, which made me very happy. And I'm very happy that the last words that I said to him were Divrei Torah. I always looked forward to visiting the Rosh Yeshiva. He seemed genuinely happy to see me. I always felt that he loved and he cared about me as I did towards him. He was my friend. I subsequently learned that I was not alone or unique. He was genuinely happy to see every Jew because he loved every Jew. He was the embodiment of V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. How did he do it? He did it because his heart and his home were always open to everyone. When he was in Baltimore, there was a certain non-frum Gevir with whom we wanted to secure an appointment. One problem, he had a reputation of having art decorating his office that one could say was not exactly appropriate for a Rosh Yeshiva. So what to do? We told the Rosh Yeshiva. "He's Jewish?" he asked. "Yes," we replied. "That's good enough." And lo and behold, the artwork was nowhere to be seen when the Rosh Yeshiva visited. We didn't give him a heads up. It just wasn't there. Another time I arranged for the Associated's chairman's mission to visit the Rosh Yeshiva in his home and the Mir Yeshiva. For everyone in the group, this was the first time they met a Gadol and they stepped foot in a yeshiva. Many were in blue jeans, not the usual dress in Beis Yisrael. No airs, just pure kindness, love for one's fellow Jew and love of Torah. Last summer, I arranged for a major leader in the Israeli Dati Leumi movement to visit the Rosh Yeshiva in his home. He was interested in establishing a relationship with the Haredi world. Knowing both camps well, it's fascinating that these two forces in the frum world, who share so much in common, knew virtually nothing of each other. It's like two ocean liners passing each other in the middle of the night. Some members of the Mir Hanhala were worried and suspicious. "What does he want?" they inquired. Not the Rosh Yeshiva. He welcomed him with open arms. I can only speculate what would have grown from that meeting had the Rosh Yeshiva not passed away so soon. A fellow Marbitz Torah? Let him come. Sensitivity is another midah I learned early from the Rav Nosson Tzvi. Yudi, you might remember this story. I first met him about 15 years ago. The Friedman family generously established the Friedman Kolo at TA. Many of the Kolo members who are still in our community were Talmidim of the Rosh Yeshiva. And because I was traveling to Eretz Yisrael shortly after the inauguration of the Kolo, and as chairman of the board of TA at that time, I was asked by Rabbi Lefkowitz to present the Rosh Yeshiva with an album of the festivities. Our Bechor Ari was in yeshiva in Israel at the time. In addition, we had a Ben Bayis who also was learning in Israel. This Ben Bayis grew up under very difficult circumstances, and my wife Linda and I invited him to accompany us to the Rosh Yeshiva's house. When I met our Ben Bayis outside of the Rosh Yeshiva's house, I was taken aback by his attire. He was wearing a polo shirt. "You couldn't wear a proper shirt to meet the Rosh Yeshiva?" I insensitively asked him. No, they're all dirty. That was his reply. At the end of our meeting, all of the men sat down on the famous couch for a picture with the Rosh Yeshiva. When I returned to Baltimore, I had the film developed. There was such a thing as film. I was astounded by what I saw when I looked at the pictures. Who did the Rosh Yeshiva put his arm around in the picture? Not me. Not our son Ari. He put his arm around this Ben Bayis of ours who needed it most. I had mentioned nothing of this young man's past or circumstances to the Rosh Yeshiva, but I didn't need to. The Rosh Yeshiva sensed it. He saw what was needed and he acted. A simple act, but a profound act. Oy, if we only had such sensitivity. I love to go to the Rosh Yeshiva's Friday afternoon shmuzim, as Rabbi Eichenstein mentioned. I usually sat immediately to the Rosh Yeshiva's left. Even there, it was sometimes hard to understand what the Rosh Yeshiva was saying. But the message was more than the actual shir, which was always profound. It was the extra message of the delivery that was the musar. How could one not leave inspired and uplifted? Here is a man who loved Torah so much that he pushed himself to the limits. One time I was so uplifted, I commented to the Rosh Yeshiva, I wish I could stay. And without missing a beat, he answered, so stay. I then countered, how do I know I can get in here and pass the Bechina? He answered, you're in. I was so excited that I got up before the whole room, before the Rosh Yeshiva changed his mind and declared the Rosh Yeshiva just admitted me as his latest Talmud to the yeshiva. And then I went looking for Rav Nachman Levovitz, and I said, Rav Nachman, I have good news for you. The Rosh Yeshiva just admitted me to the yeshiva, and I understand I have to talk to you about tuition. And Rav Nachman replied, don't worry, we'll deal with the tuition later. We're still dealing with it. I may have been half joking, but the Rosh Yeshiva was serious. You want to learn Torah? I'll make a place for you. The Torah belongs to all Jews. We are all obligated to make a place for every Jew and invite them in to learn. The Rosh Yeshiva taught me to never underestimate oneself. 2 years ago in Yerushalayim, he told me he wanted to come to Baltimore in late August. Baltimore? There's no money in Baltimore. Late August? You might have to go to the beach to find the non-frum Yidden. He didn't come that year. The following year, I was again in the Rosh Yeshiva's house. I always went into the Rebbitzin first to ask how the Rosh Yeshiva was doing and how he was feeling. They had just returned from a grueling fundraising trip to a famous city in North America, and to quote the Rebbitzin, he was hoping that he would do better. That was a nice way of saying the community did not respond properly. I pitied the fellow who organized the event. He had to bear the Rosh Yeshiva's disappointment on his shoulders forever. I then entered the Rosh Yeshiva's room. We're coming to Baltimore this summer. I thought I had dodged that one. I used the same arguments as last year. I knew the fundraising record of our city. While respectable, I could not imagine that it would increase by the amounts the Rosh Yeshiva was saying. The yeshiva needs money. We have to try. I want you to be in charge of the event. There was no way of getting out of this one this time. I had visions of returning to Yerushalayim and Sukkot after the Baltimore event and asking the Rebbitzin, how is the Rosh Yeshiva doing now? And I imagined her saying, the people in Baltimore were so nice. However, the thought of the Rosh Yeshiva coming back from Baltimore without the money that he needed, which I thought was quite likely, haunted me. But still we had to try, and try we did. This community responded more generously than anyone except the Rosh Yeshiva would have imagined, and I learned a valuable lesson. Try your hardest. Don't be afraid to fail. Never sell yourself or anyone short. Like the Rosh Yeshiva, we can be a can-do Jew. On that visit to Baltimore, I remember the Rosh Yeshiva sitting down to lunch in my dining room. No detail escaped his eye. You cannot imagine how happy he made my daughter when he complimented her baked goods. Another simple act. At that same historic visit, I sat down with the Rosh Yeshiva for a few minutes after Shachris. It was clear that the heavy financial burdens of the yeshiva were bearing down on him. I tried to offer him words of encouragement from my difficult tenure as chairman of the board of TA. I understood what it felt like to have so many families dependent on one's ability to make the payroll that week. Right? Yeah, he knows too. If you succeed, the Rebbeim, their children, their wives, they'll be able to eat. And the Mir burden was of a much greater magnitude. TA was the minor leagues, the Mir was the majors. And the Rosh Yeshiva nodded his head. 3 times a day we read in Kriya Shema that our love for Hashem must be so great, so unconditional, that we are willing to give all of our heart, all of our resources, all of our strength, and yes, even our lives for Hashem. When we think of examples, we think of Rabbi Akiva and the Asarei Harugei Malchus. We think of the heroes of the Holocaust, like Rav Elchanan Vaso and Hashem Yikam Damo, who led his Talmidim into the gas chambers singing Ani Mamin. But we ourselves met such an example here in Baltimore just last year, the Rosh Yeshiva of Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkle Yarteit. So great was his love of Hashem, his love of Hashem's Torah and Hashem's people, that he gave every ounce of his strength to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He literally was meimis atzmo for the Torah HaKadosha. What he could not achieve in life, he ultimately achieved in his Petira, saving his beloved Mir Yeshiva from imminent financial collapse and securing its financial future for now. The same donors who gave him musar, but not money, just a few months earlier, somehow found a way to make the impossible happen. It took the Rosh Yeshiva's Petira to make what they thought could not happen a reality. He knew the capacity was there. We doubted. We were wrong. Nu pshat in meimus is atzmo for the Torah HaKadosha. What made Rav Nosson Tzvi into the giant he became? I asked Rabbi Shali Lopin, the uncle of my Machatinis to him to Dubin, this question. He grew up with Rav Nosson Tzvi and went to school with him in Chicago. Rabbi Lopin told me that Rav Nosson Tzvi was a regular boy. When they both graduated high school, they both went off to Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Lopin went to his grandfather, Rav Elia Lopian's yeshiva in Kfar Hasidim, and Rav Nosson Tzvi went to his family's yeshiva in the Mir. There, Rav Nosson Tzvi's uncle, Rav Lezer Yudel, got him the best chavrusas 24/7, but Rav Nosson Tzvi had the desire and the discipline to make himself into what we saw. The grandparents of my son-in-law, Moshe Maistel, were best friends with Rav Nosson Tzvi's parents in Chicago. When Rav Beinish died, news reached the senior Maistels that Rav Nosson Tzvi was the surprise choice to succeed his father-in-law as the new Mir Rosh Yeshiva. When told of the news, Moshe's grandmother exclaimed in disbelief, Nady Finkel was made Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir? The question was a logical one. The Nady Finkel who left Chicago indeed was not a Rosh Yeshiva, but he worked on himself, as Rabbi Haffer said, and became Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, a great Rosh Yeshiva. When I grew up in Detroit, the great Talmidei Chachamim were from Europe and spoke with an accent. The implied message to us was that American-born kids who grew up with Al Kaline and Gordie Howe became doctors and lawyers. Rosh Yeshivas were from another continent, another era, maybe even another planet. We did not have the Rabbi Kolevskis and the Rav Nosson Tzvis as our role models. Rav Nosson Tzvi was very much aware of this. Rather than hide his background, he used it to inspire others from similar backgrounds. When American teenagers would visit him in Yerushalayim, he famously asked, anyone from Chicago? I'm from Chicago. Anyone attend the academy? I went to the academy. Anyone on the basketball team? I was on the basketball team. Look what happened to me. It can happen to you. It can happen to each of us if we want it bad enough. Rav Nosson Tzvi showed us that if you will it, it is no dream. Nothing is beyond reach. No illness can stop you. No goal is unreachable when it comes to being an Eved Hashem. The heart has unlimited capacity to love our fellow Jew if we just open it up. After meeting Rav Nosson Tzvi, we know that impossible is a word designed by the Yetzer Hara. As those who loved him and learned from him, may we honor his memory by following in his footsteps. Tehei nishmaso tzura b'tzura chayim.